we are back with a bang. I promised you on that. Okay, so you are at this track that's powered by Juniper Networks, and we are all set to really excavate how companies are designing, how they're really building out their data center architectures that require more complex planning, more complex implementation for, of course, the most optimum performance that we can really envision. Well, this is going to be a CEO specific panel discussion right there, because the leading minds are going to be talking to you. They're going to be rewiring the constraints with AI, advanced data center strategies. Plus, this is all going to be topped with a dash of fun and humor, which I just witnessed backstage. So I can actually, sense that's going to be also passed on to all my viewers out there. So let's get all set. Well, the session will be moderated by Abhishek Das, KPMG. So we're going to be welcoming him very, very shortly. And let's give a big shout out to the speakers, the panelists joining us as well. Well, the leading Piyush Somani, the founder, CEO from ESTS. We're going to be welcoming you. Mr. Sunil Gupta, CEO, Yota, one of my favorite person on this earth. With that, we would also be welcoming Sergeant Paul, the Managing Director and Country Manager, ladies and gentlemen, India and SAARC from Juniper Networks. This is going to be exciting. And with that, also allow me to welcome Kamal Nath, the CEO from SIFI Technologies. Abhishek, I'm all set to hand it over to all you gents out there. While we just celebrated the International Women's Day, here's to celebrating the men on this panel and the discussions forward.
Thanks, Shika. Thank you so much, everyone. Really pleasure to be here. Hello, my name is Abhishek Das. I'm an Associate Director and an ML Engineer at KPMG India. KPMG are absolutely honored to be partnering with the Economic Times to moderate this discussion for the Digital Warrior CEO panel discussion. So we do have, the leading minds of information networks and technologies and data centers here with us today, talking about rewiring constraints with AI, advanced data center strategies. As Shika mentioned, for our panelists, we have Mr. Sergeant Paul from Juniper Networks, Mr. Sunil Gupta, CEO of Yota, Mr. Piyush Somani, founder, CMD and CEO of ESDS, and Mr. Kamal Nath, CEO of SIFI Technologies India. So I'd like to begin by asking my panel to reflect on the kind of year that's passed. 2020 has been described as disruptive, transformative, a watershed year, one for the history books, and various other adjectives not fit for print. Yet for our panelists, it was a year where data centers became an essential service from in
Okay, Abhishek, we are not able to hear you.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted, can you hear me now?
Yeah, this is better, yeah.
Great. Okay, I'll start again. My first question is for Mr. Kamal Nath, CEO of SIFI. What was your experience maintaining and running data centers in 2020? Specifically, how did SIFI Technologies manage the critical infrastructure and networks during the pandemic?
Okay, that's a very obvious question, Abhishek. So I think during exactly this time, I think during this week last year, the whole thing started. And like everyone, we are never prepared for this. But, during the last 1 year, it gave us a lot of new ideas and new thoughts to how data center operations should be run. So as far as our data centers are concerned, I'm talking about SIFI now. We have got 9 operational data centers spread across 6 cities, from where mission critical applications in the entire India's banking, insurance, payment gateways, interbanking transactions, stock exchanges were running from our data centers, including healthcare, e-commerce, utilities, education, and of course the hyperscale service providers. So it was an enormous challenge, when we thought about it. But the good part is being a managed services provider, both on the network data center and on the, other IT towers. Probably we had always, loved the idea of remote management. We are also one of the remote management, managed services company in India. We had already implemented, a BMS system, which were, of course, in each of the data centers, but they are also interconnected to a central command system. Okay, so our dependency of people sitting in data centers were, in our case, far lesser than what would have been for for other, particularly the on-premise customer data centers. Correct. So now what we are seeing now, that this entire model of remote management need to gain more and more maturity over a period of time, like the way it has happened for the IT sitting inside the data center. As all of us know that you can manage IT, a data center in US right across sitting in India. Similarly, going forward, the learnings out of that 2020 is that we need to be able to manage data centers more and more remotely, and not only from a single command center, but even if the engineers are sitting at home. So the industry has to, come up to that kind of remote management. I think that has been the biggest learning. But the good news is we have been able to, help our customers to run their businesses. So you have not heard about a stock exchange going down or a banking system, apart from few things, and most of the things were very localized with this, either a bank or an insurance company. But as a whole, I will congratulate everyone in the data center, industry, operator part of the data center, that we did. I think collectively we did a very good job. I mean, all of us who are there in the panel, and of course, who are also not there in the panel. So we have been able to give a hope to the country that to all the sectors, that you can move your data center away from your premise to our premises, collectively and in a distributed way, and your business will probably run better. Abhishek.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Sunil Gupta, CEO of Yota, you are responsible for building the largest number of third-party data centers in India. What was your experience in 2020, and how did you see some of the emerging technologies such as AI, IoT, distributed data centers, BMS systems come into play?
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek, and good afternoon for everybody, all the audience, all the panelists. So, Abhishek, for me, being new into the industry as Yota, while there can be disadvantage because you possibly are a latecomer, but it can also be advantageous because you're not carrying a baggage, you're not carrying, you're not carrying an inheritance that you have to tie up with the old systems, and you can possibly introduce newer technologies and latest technologies from day one. So COVID obviously came later. We started building and designing our data center much earlier, previous year before that. And for all the right reasons, we decided that we will go for a fault tolerant data center, which was tier 4 uptime data center. So the demand of that data center, if I say in a single word itself, was that irrespective of what happens, even if not there is a single person in your building, and whatever type of catastrophe or fatality comes in anywhere in the data center or outside in your nearby ecosystem, your building cannot go down. It cannot come down from its N capacity. So if your building is, let's say, 30 megawatt of IT load, it will have to keep on running on 30 megawatt of IT load, which means not even a single rack can go down because of a single failure. Now, easier said than done. The moment you try to not only design it, but also implement it accordingly, the only way to achieve this was reduce your dependence on people and make the system complete, self-sufficient, self-healing, and automated system. So this was a part of our design. So whether it is, the cooling system which was possibly, I think, was done first time, that we actually put a sensor type of a cable across my entire cooling distribution system across the building, on the terrace, on the vertical headers, and on the floors everywhere, that even if there's the smallest of the leakage, you actually are able to sense that leakage, exactly pinpoint the place of the leakage, and then through automation, you are also able to close the nearby valves and shift the entire cooling load to the other end of the building. Just giving an example. Same thing we did for, let's say, fuel distribution system. When a fuel is coming from the underground, the fuel tankers to a day tanker into the generator sets, how you ensure a single possible leakage you are able to detect it and shift the entire operation of the fuel shifting system from one pump to the another pump into another set of pipes, so that there is no disaster happening anywhere. There are many examples like this, which it was not because of the demand of COVID, which came later. It was the demand of that fault tolerant data center, which we had to implement small into the entire building, just to make sure that a single event of failure, irrespective of people being there in the building or not, you are able to take care of that. We introduced a system like RFID in the whole. You see that in, for example, in H&M store or a big bazaar or whatever for your retail products, right? That so that there's no theft. What we actually introduced RFID in data centers, because in data center over a period of time, you start getting thousands of devices of customers, right? And there's so much of in and out movement of devices happen. And so many times only a component like a hard disk comes in and come out. And customers always have a unique problem that they are never able to audit their inventory itself. It becomes a financial auditing problem. It becomes a technological problem to manage. We actually introduced a RFID system where right from the journey of material coming into my building gate, and you putting a RFID tag and putting that into the system. And after that, wherever the equipment moves through the building, either within the building or when it's going out of the building, the location of the equipment get tracked automatically, like microsecond, without you getting to know about it, right? And you making that entire information locational and the information of the equipment right on the portal to the customer. So these are the things which not only are making your building self-sufficient, with zero failure, it gives a better user experience to the user. And that is what reduces the dependence on people, gives peace of mind to your staff as well. And we have actually used almost all such technologies in our data center.
That's great. Increased RPA, robotic process automation. I heard a lot about tracking more digital assets, thereby creating more volumes of data, and almost sounds like talking about almost autonomous sort of building management, autonomous data center management from both of you gentlemen. I think that's really, really interesting. Mr. Sajan Paul, you have 3 decades of experience, sir, in telco and the networking domain, and you've spearheaded the digital transformation for telco enterprise and government's customers. One of your mantras is you want to bring simplicity to the complex network infrastructure of India and SAARC countries. How was 2020 for you, and sort of, what was your experience? We've heard some mention about distributing the data infrastructure. What was your experience with that?
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. And I think we really have a set of data center warriors in this panel and the previous panel. I would say that they were the real COVID warriors during 2020. And but for them, we would have gone to our knees, especially the IT companies and the people who are heavily dependent, including the governmental missionaries. That's why government is trying to put in an infrastructure status to data center and some critical status and things like that. I think it's an amazing set of new policies are coming into play. So looking back into 2020, I think we come in from various things. Our Juniper Networks founding motto is to connect everything and empower everyone. I think these are the times that we are seeing connecting everything. When I say everything, it includes everything, and then empower everyone. I think that is our founding motto, and we are living through that experience. What I've seen is a few issues, a few challenges rather, is the perimeter of the information is shifted to your homes, and especially people who deal with intellectual property and critical and sensitive classified or what makes up their or value of the company. You suddenly see that we need to let go of some of those things, and then the perimeter is shifted to homes. And the second piece is if we were to attribute that to the security and the construct of that, the second piece is connectivity. Not every home is designed to have a very robust, decent connectivity. That we have tons of gigabits of bandwidth coming to my facility in Bangalore, where we run our world's largest development center in Bangalore. And we don't have that kind of capability to reach everybody's home in every cluster in this country. So that is another challenge that we had to face. And the third challenge is, how can we get the user closer to the content, because most of the time, for the multinational companies like us, the content is hosted from across the globe, where it is easy to access, and you have fastest path to the content. And now, because of these various elements, we had to really battle this. I think India as a whole, we did a commendable job in this sector to ensure that we got our act together. So we have seen, moving into the service provider side, we have seen huge amount of data growth. And I think it's going to remain here. I was thinking it's a bubble, but I'm seeing that growth is remaining, because we kind of touch every telco backbone in India, and the bulk of the data center traffic and data center interconnect traffic travel through our gears, and we get some kind of sense of the amount of data traffic and uncontrolled growth, and architecturally and volumetrically, we have seen that is going through the network. So overall, 2020, I think all of us have been nudged to move into cloud. I'm just using a generic term, whether it's a co-located or third party or cloud kind of an infrastructure. And the service providers have scaled up their ability to react to that quickly. Those are a few of my opening views of what really happened back in 2020.
Did you see a sort of a shift in focus towards regional data centers? Is that something that you're considering now?
Absolutely. I think the journey began even prior to that, because the edge data center was a concept coined by the 5G decoupled distributed architecture. And data center players like all of us also will have some say in that. Not that telco need to own all the edge data centers. I think our previous speaker spoke about there are 650 odd districts, and we need at least 250 sites of distributed data centers to bring content close to that. That journey began back then, and I think that journey will continue. And it is not going to be 3 or 4 major mega data centers, but it's going to be hundreds of small clusters of data centers. And if I can bring simplicity to that complexity, I think that's one of the challenges Juniper has taken on ourselves. Yeah.
Well said. Bringing simplicity to complexity in a distributed data center world. Mr. Piyush Samani, you manage one of the largest data centers in Mumbai. And obviously we know how COVID has affected that state. What was your experience running data centers in 2020, and how are you thinking about data center infrastructure management differently as a result of the?
Yeah, so COVID was a great learning as a data center player, as a cloud service provider. Lots of things have changed right from the time COVID has come in for us as well. So prior to COVID, we implemented our own DCIM. So Enlight 360 is a complete data center infrastructure management suite, and we take care of our entire cloud orchestration as well as our DCIM in the Enlight 360 software itself. But prior to COVID, we never thought that there could be a situation where you will never be able to have at least a single person in the data center. So that was never thought at all. So we thought that, okay, if this goes wrong, then electricians are there. They will just go reboot the AC. If this goes wrong, there would be electricians. They would go and just probably switch on this button. So those were the things which we missed out while designing our own software, because we assumed that these are some very common resources which are always available. But post-COVID, there was a realization those 2-3 days, those initial 2-3 days when we were not getting permission from the police department to send people to all our 3 data centers like Nasik, Mumbai, Bangalore. That time we realized that we need to design software in such a way that it becomes autonomous. It drives the entire data center on its own. And then we started implementing. So we have a very strong R&D team, like 180 people working on our own software products. And we immediately started implementing IoT and ML, machine learning, into our Enlight 360. And within no time, we were able to get that thing implemented. We were able to get the sensors in place. So temperature was getting monitored very quickly because those are some very basic sensors. So we started monitoring temperature, where exactly in what part of my data center, what is the temperature right now. Based on that, we started like deploying tiles, mechanized tiles. So those were being operated through our DCIM itself. So they were able to accordingly release more cold air in certain pockets. So we started doing that. Then we were collecting a lot of data from the batteries also. We were collecting a lot of data from the UPS systems also. The reverse harmonics that are happening during the daytime and the reverse harmonics during the night time. So all that information was coming to us. And then we started implementing RPA for the machine rebooting part. So if at all UPS systems or if at all any of the AC system, air conditioning system, they fail during the process, how they can be rebooted, how they can be controlled. So we started implementing that. So we are yet to complete on that part, but IoT and ML we were able to implement in a very short span of time. And I think so now the world is also going to look for such autonomous data centers where if you do not have humans inside, you should be able to completely run the operations of the data center without any hesitation. So we are very soon going to release an updated version of our Enlight 360 for the market, so that people having challenges in India. Now the softwares which we are implementing, majority of the data centers implement the softwares which are designed for an American data center or for an Australian data center, some other country where you do not have the challenges that we have in India. But in India, we have far many more challenges than any other country. And we've designed a product to run for our country. And we are pretty sure now moving forward, all the data centers that are going to come up in India, our own data centers also, and those other enterprise data centers or other on-premise data center, Enlight 360 will play a very, very crucial role over there.
Fantastic. Necessity really is the mother of all invention, and it seems as though your organization has tackled that head on. I'm loving the themes that I'm hearing today from all of you gentlemen about autonomous data center management, about using AI and ML to basically run not only the day-to-day operations processes, but also to augment the workforce processes that happen there. So that's really, really interesting. I think it's a really, really great start to it. I'd like to sort of move on from the past to talk a little bit about this brave new world that we're facing post the pandemic. So Gartner agency notes that although data center budgets were cut in 2020 as a result of the pandemic, they're forecasting a 6% increase in data center spending in 2021. Meanwhile, the research firm Omdia reports that 17 million square feet of new data center capacity was added last year, with another 8 million square feet to be added in the first half of this year. Amazon, Microsoft, and Google have just announced opening new data centers in 28 new regions. So, Mr. Sajan Paul, a very sort of trite question, if you will, is this sector recession-proof?
Yeah, I think absolutely. While, as I said, during the COVID, I think the change was much faster than if it was a normal situation, out of necessity, and we have seen that trend continuing, and going back on the digitization journey is very difficult. I think the convenience of the digitization, the connected data centers, distributed data centers, and the mere business case is so compelling, and I think one of the analysts said India is going to be the second largest digital economy in the world, and some of the prediction shows that we should be have a CAGR of around 12% from 2019 to 24 on the data center space alone, and this sector alone will contribute $300 billion plus into the government of the India GDP. So this sector is going to grow, and I think our future really lies in how sustainable is this data center business. And the government of India, I think I can't resist but to say, the government of India policies and the infrastructure status which is coming up, and the wholehearted embrace embracing this idea by several states to build data center hubs. I think Sunil is fully across creating large data center hubs in various settings, and Piyush and Kamal and other data center warriors. And you will actually see it's much more adaptable, much more usable utility with a lot more predictability is coming in. I think it could be pay-per-use, it could be it could be built to suit. It could be. I think we are kind of evolving into that kind of a maturity in India. I think it's amazing to see this transformation, Abhishek. Yeah.
Great, very, very optimistic indeed. And so, Mr. Kamalnath, coming back to you, sir. I mean, how do you think, moving forward, let's say going into the next 5 years with the proliferation of, say, 5G technology, coming up throughout the world, how do you think data centers are preparing for the impact of the velocity, veracity, and volume of data that's about to hit us?
See, I think the coming days are very interesting, and we are going to see, probably a little shift in priorities as far as setting up data centers are concerned. So the whole traditional definition of data centers, earlier days we used to think customers used to build their data center at their office, okay, or their factories, right? And then came, the commercial data center providers like all of us, and incidentally, SIFI had set up the first commercial data center in India, and I think it can cause laughter. That was on top of a railway station, right? So from that, from a data center being hosted at on top of a Vashi railway station, Sunil will be knowing this, to the modern data centers which Sunil is building and what all of us are building or trying to build, we have come a long way. Now, a very interesting thing, interesting aspect with respect to SIFI, you must be knowing that we are also India's first enterprise network company. So we have set up the first MPLS network in the country. So by virtue of that, and we also happen to be the first private internet service provider in the country. So by virtue of that, we have 2,000 point of presence across the country, right? And this whole idea of edge data center 5G is a good news for us, is because we have already identified 90 data centers out of this 90 POPs. I mean, so-called POPs out of this 2,000 POPs which we have, where we are going to build, we are going to convert that into edge data center, right? The reason being, you see, if all of us understand, or really look into it, like customers always the preferred choice was their own data center, but it has got their own challenges, and everybody has seen the challenges, during COVID. So one choice for customer is to move from their own data centers to large data centers, with very high uptime, with strong resilience, and so on and so forth, right? And to cloud. So cloud and data center, I will loosely, loosely use these terminologies. But from a customer perspective, most of the time it means the same from a data center perspective. Now there are a lot of applications, and more new applications which are going to come up, which need not reside in one central place. Right, and there are hundreds of examples of that. For example, one of our customers, which is Tata Steel, which is a 100+ years old company, they are trying to run their factory remotely. Okay, so for which the manufacturing devices which they have, that data need not go to the go to a remote cloud, right? So that's a typical example where for a manufacturing company, and there are many use cases. For a manufacturing company, there is no need for the data to go to a central location. Not for all applications. ERP data needs to go to a central data center. However, for predictive maintenance of machines in that factory, that did not travel all the way to a central location. For example, your healthcare, most of the hospitals, and I have seen that, we had to really struggle to take the hospital, applications to a data center or to cloud, because they love it, at their premise. So healthcare, enterprise ICT, like, for example, virtual desktop. There's no reason for virtual desktops where the latency is an important factor to travel all the way to a central data center. And of course, 5G. 5G is going to tremendously, the benefits and the use case of 5G is going to trigger the setting up of edge data centers, right? And we are already into it. And without going into details, there are a lot of OTT players who are wanting edge data centers because their content need to be nearest to consumers like us. It need to, I mean, when you are want to subscribe to a content on experience, or you want to watch a movie, there's no reason I mean, earlier we used to go to US, now or to any other country. Now that good news is the data is here, and look at YouTube. The entire YouTube experience is not only because of 4G. Okay, it is simply because of the fact that the content through a content distributor network is actually residing very close to all of us, right? Wherever we are, in which part of the country. So I think this edge data center and the hyperscale both will grow equally, and there is a case for both these I'll call them twins, like I mean, both the hyperscale data center as well as the edge data center to grow together. And I completely agree with what Sajan was saying, because he's into this area for a very, very long time in the industry, almost 3 decades, all of us know. I mean, this is a great time for the industry. And let me tell you something. I don't know from where the analysts got the data. I can find today organizations who are data center and cloud hostile. They always used to believe in their own data center, build their own data center. They're all going, almost all of them. Nobody is saying I will stay in my data center, which is in my factory or in my office. Okay, so the data center industry, we are very bullish. I think everyone in this room, from the data center industry side, we are very bullish. A lot of investments are going on, and I'm personally very hopeful. But yes, probably the edge is a new trend which will come up, and all of us are very excited about that. Abhishek.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting to hear about your optimism for both hyperscaling as well as edge data centers. Piyush Samani, coming to you, sir. What are your thoughts? Which one do you reckon will be more important? And do you think that hyperscaling is that now a slightly less interesting paradigm, given the discussion that's come out today, where a lot of people have tried to focus on edge data centers? Is hyperscaling just something that's going to be driven by cloud vendors and the FANGs of the world, or are there going to be room for hyperscaling enterprise data centers?
So if we do a breakdown of the entire opportunity, now, as we know that the digital transformation is the next big thing that is going to happen over the next 5 years, 10 years. Now, if we break it down further, we will see that the data center, there are a couple of categories in data center business also. One would be the hyperscalers would be there, and one would be the enterprise retail colo kind of business. So if you look at the wholesale colo and retail colo, there would be probably a 50-50 over there as well. And there are a lot of new generation companies which are coming now. New generation companies also, and some of the other tech companies as well. Those are bringing a lot of blockchain workloads, IoT workloads, RPA workloads, and the compute requirement of those workloads is going to be far more than the compute requirement which would be coming from the hyperscalers. The traditional hyperscalers would be only focusing on providing cloud infrastructure as a service, and vis-a-vis a new generation company which is coming up with blockchain workloads or IoT workloads, AI, ML workloads, RPA, their consumption of compute is going to be far more than the traditional hyperscalers. So moving forward, next 3 years, 4 years time, we will see there would be a lot of new companies. The FANGs of the world may not be able to dominate the entire infrastructure as a service business. There would be a lot of new generation companies that would be coming up, and they will take away majority of the business. And disruption has been a constant that we have seen in the technology industry. We have regularly seen every 5 years, there are some players who are going out and there are some players who are coming in. And in next 5 years, I expect the same thing to happen. There would be a lot of big players who will go out, and there would be a lot of new generation startups who will come in. And they're all getting funded also. If we track the funding that is happening from the American investors, European investors, we will see that there is a trend right now. The companies which are getting investments right now, even in India, the companies which are getting investments right now, those are the ones over next couple of years who will bring massive transformation in the tech world. And whatever estimations have been done, we keep on talking about Gartner projections. Gartner projected 6% growth, Gartner projected 4% growth. All of that is going to be completely disrupted by the actual consumption that is going to happen. We are running the biggest IoT workloads right now, which is happening in India and in the world also. The biggest smart metering project that is happening right now in the world is going live phase by phase from our cloud, from our data center. And we've seen the consumption is humongous. 3 years back, we never anticipated that this is the kind of consumption that is going to happen in the future. And literally in one rack, you are going to consume 25 kilowatts of power, 30 kilowatts of power. Each of the servers which are going to come up with the GPUs, their consumption would be in kilowatts. So that's the future. And you are anticipating only 6% growth rate for the data centers. When the consumption is going to be 10 times more, how can you anticipate only 6% growth for the data center? So the opportunity is big. And that is the reason everyone is investing in this space. And everyone is wanting to make maximum, because data center investments are considered to be the most safest investment. And whatever amount you invest today, you make an exit 6-7 years down the line, you always earn far more than what you have invested. So that is happening right now in India. And also one more thing we need to understand, compared to Japan, the size of the data centers, the amount of compute which is there in India is one-tenth. We are 1/10 of Japan. So once if we want to get closer to Japan's economy, Japan's GDP, we have to have 10 times more compute power, 10 times more data centers in India. So imagine what's the future for our country 5 years, 6 years down the line.
That's great. Okay, so we'll take those Gartner estimates with a pinch of salt in that case. I love it. Okay, so a lot of anticipation for a lot of increased growth in this space. Mr. Sunil Gupta, coming to you. So we're hearing about this explosion in data center growth, but what about hiring experienced data center personnel? You mentioned earlier this move towards autonomous data centers. Are we saying that AI and automation is going to be able to supplant the need for hiring personnel going forward?
There are different facets to this, Abhishek. So if I divide it into 3 bullets, one is the hyperscale data centers, which we all are making from a facility and co-location point of view, because of the need of they being fault tolerant, because you can't afford a error which is driven by a person's error. Basically, you cannot afford to do that. The systems have to be self-resilient, right? So because of that need, in any case today, if you see all of our data centers, the number of people just to run the facilities are bare minimum, right? The systems are redundant, they are automated, they keep on running in. And COVID actually proved it, that our data centers were running in even if there was no person in the building. The persons who were there, they were just taking and monitoring the parameters, but actually the building was running on its own. So in any case, the number of people required for the need of the business to be totally self-sufficient, it was never there. It is not person dependent. The need of AI ML in data center will not be, or rather the impact will not be to reduce the manpower. It will be rather to detect the problems before they actually occur. Today also we have automation, but tomorrow the moment your AI becomes more of a ML dependent AI, where machine itself is able to intelligently assess a problem which may occur in future, or a performance degradation may occur in future, and being able to tell us what to do, maybe replace a component, right? That is something which will come, which will again be more to increase the uptime and resiliency of the building and facility, not to reduce the manpower per se, which is already lower. Now, this impact will be majorly visible, and possibly from staffing point of view, will be when you get into edge data centers. Because unlike the hyperscale data parks, which will be like 4, 5, 6, 7 locations for any operator, for the need of any cloud operator or OTT operator, edge data centers are supposed to be like hundreds of them. You know, ultimately they'll be into town B, town C, everywhere. The only way to actually roll out that type of capacity and manage them on a continuous basis would be standardization. You are able to have standard modules, deploy them, just assemble them, test them at a central place, ship it out to a location, prepare the site, install it, and then you are able to manage, they are able to work on their own with intelligent AI or automation, and you are able to just monitor them remotely. So it will physically not be possible to make them dependent on people to manage them. It will have to be AI ML driven. So that possibly might be a future impact, that instead of people driven, they'll be AI ML driven. They will not be very well less people. The third aspect of this is actually the tech services. As Piyush also saying that while there may be many people who are business model is pure co-location, which is a great business model for the people who are into that. But if you are trying to get into enterprise domain, if you're trying to get into government's digital transformation, nobody is talking about co-location. That is the game of hyperscalers who want only co-location. And enterprises and governments, everybody just want fully managed services. If you are a managed service provider, if you're a cloud operator, then of course that business suddenly is very much tools driven, and that is very much manpower driven. There's a whole lot of scope where AI ML, that today's generation AI, which is like machine becoming intelligent and being able to take calls its own instead of we trying to make the machine educated, that will be able to predict many failures, be it cyber security failures or be it regular, let's say, operating problems into our various equipment. It will be able to identify many problems beforehand, being able to also do a whole lot of L1, L2 stuff, the works as well. That is something which AI ML of future will always bring in. And I think Piyush was talking quite a lot about that when he was talking about his cloud services accordingly. So I think on tech services, the impact of staffing will be there, because that service today is heavily manpower driven. And the more you bring AI into that, the manpower reduction impact may come in. But on a hyperscale colo, the manpower is already less. For the need of keeping the fidelity high, we'll have to do AI. For edge data centers, AI ML in any case would make sure that the remote locations are totally without any staff, and you're able to manage them remotely from a single location.
Thank you. That's a very interesting three-tier solution to it. I like the fact that there is that remote AI ML aspect of it that's managing some of those edge data centers, but then there are also data centers where humans remain in the loop, and the AI ML is sort of there to help augment the processes that they do. That's really great. Okay, I want to move on, even though this is like super fascinating, and talk a little bit about sustainability, because while I think we've made the case, or rather 2020 helped make the case, that data centers are essential services, but at what cost to the environment? Because every year we have millions of data centers worldwide, and they're purging metric tons of hardware, they're draining country-sized amounts of electricity, and they're generating carbon emissions as much as the global airline industry. So actually several models predict that data center energy usage could be over 10% of global electricity supply in 2030 if left unchecked. So I wanted to start by asking you, Piyush Samani, what does a green data center look like to you?
So a green data center, in a simple language, a green data center has to be completely powered by a green source of energy. So it's not just a green building that, okay, you have designed a green building and you are running a data center in a green building. It's not like that. Your entire power through which you are getting the data center powered up has to come from green source, like maybe solar or hydropower or wind power. And we are working in that direction now, because we understand that today the entire country is consuming 190 gigawatts of power. As on date, now we are sitting in the month of March, our power consumption at this point of time is 190 gigawatt. This is the country's power consumption. And by 2030, the country, just data centers in India are going to consume more than 100 gigawatts of power. So that is completely unsustainable. But if it is unsustainable, can we also live without the data centers? We cannot. We will have to go on centralized data center business model. So the country needs to think now, all the data center companies who are there in the space right now, they need to think now that how are we going to sustain this business model in the future? And you have to focus on making your data center completely green. Couple of things are not economically feasible at this point of time, because solar is only available during the daytime. In nighttime, you do not have solar power, and you cannot just do some battery backup and run on those at this point of time. And then we are talking to like National Hydro Power Corporation also, so that we can actually tap some of the hydropower also. We are talking to the companies who are into wind power. So we are talking to everyone to make sure that, okay, during the daytime we can have solar power and during the nighttime we can have wind power or hydropower, something of that sort, so that we can have a complete 100% green power. But that would take at least another 2 years to make ourselves a 100% green data center. But everyone has to think in that direction, right, at this point of time, or else by 2030 the entire business model will become unsustainable. The country would be giving more than 40% of its power to just data centers.
Very strong words indeed. I loved your definition of saying that it has to rely on renewable energies. It can't just be a net carbon neutral kind of solution. That's really great. Mr. Sajan Paul, your thoughts, sir. What does a green data center look like to you?
Well, I think we come from the business of designing the next generation and most innovative systems. So in every engineer's mind, there is a concept called watts per gigabit is being the speed of data transfer. So every generation of chipsets that we design, we are in the silicon and system and software business. So every generation of chipset that we make, we actually reduce the watts per gig. I mean, that is one of the very critical criteria, apart from other metrics like three-dimensional metrics like subscriber services and scale. You will actually see that is personified in most of our systems that is coming forward. The other important matter, I think many of you may be tracking the computing and you would actually see that the so-called Moore's law is kind of plateauing. I think it's an unprecedented thing, and we are seeing it in our lifetime, which is never seen in our early days. The only thing to catch up with Moore's law is so to speak, is automation. We need many systems to come together under one fabric, whether it's a distributed data center, distributed compute storage and network. They all need to kind of come together. So I'm seeing that that is fueling, because our innovations unless we human beings invent some other material, which is not the silicon that we speak about today, we may have to live with automation to catch up with the Moore's law going forward. So the sustainability of this, Piyush did mention about sustainable energies. The other concept which is coming in is, while we have a tremendous amount of solar energy available, but we don't have a connected storage infrastructure to store that power, which can be tapped and utilized. There are many companies, startups are coming up with storing. For example, your electric vehicle could be a 100 kilowatt storage while it is at rest at home. So, and it can be feeding into your grid to provide. And imagine that if the electric vehicles, and if you track the electric EV market, I think it's on a steep rise in India. I think a lot of new ideas, those of you who want to invest in that sector, I think a lot of new ideas are coming up. I think that will all collectively solve this problem in the long run. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So the hope is for innovation and sort of automation to sort of assist with creating a green data center. Mr. Kamal Nath, your Sifi Technologies runs several hundred data centers around the country. I mean, how are you thinking about reducing the carbon footprint, the sort of energy consumption of data centers?
Yeah, so Abhishek, an interesting question. As I've told you, we are running data centers, for the last. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a data center which is running on the top of a railway station, up to the most modern data center where hyperscalers and a lot many leading banking and financial institutes and payment systems are running. So we have seen the whole generation, unlike Sunil or Piyush, who are building the most modern data centers, which we are also doing. So we have got different kind of challenges, depending on the generations of data centers which we have. We have 3 generations of data centers which Sifi is running today. Okay, so our problem is a little different. But I think Sajan, they have mentioned, Sajan from his perspective, Piyush has covered that. I'm sure Sunil will also add his wisdom on this matter. But I'm just thinking about one idea. Why not these alternative renewable power companies and the data center companies come in a single ecosystem? For example, I'm right now sitting out of Noida, right? We have seen in the last 2 months, 3 months, how many data center campuses are coming out in Noida. What about UP government, for example, if I have an option, I will ask the UP government why you are not also promoting a solar power unit, along with the whatever storages are required, in and around this space, right? So that will be a good, idea to implement. In that case, all the data centers which are coming over here, we can use that. Correct. So I think it is not about, like, the data center and network industry are very close to each other. They have to work hand in hand. Similarly, the data center and the power industry. Today, power means most of the government powers, right? Government utility companies. How can there be alternatives, renewable energy sources who will work along with the data center, companies? I mean, treating them as customers and build their ecosystem around us. I mean, this is a wild thought, but I think, I guess this thought has to get enhanced and, in future. Otherwise, I don't see any other reason, any other way of how to implement what we are discussing today. We can all thrive towards, to lower PUE. Our customers also demand, we also want that. It makes us more efficient. The customer pays less. And it also means, greener data centers operations, right? But I think there has to be a policy now, apart from, the encouragement which we are getting as data center hosting providers from the government for setting up data centers. That industry has to, in parallel, come up. So that's my few cents on this. Yeah, Abhishek.
Sure. No, definitely an ambitious plan for a very critical project. How are you thinking?
Abhishek, you are mute. You're not audible.
Sorry, I was going to give you the final words. Sir, how are you thinking of green data centers?
Yeah, Abhishek, I think all the panelists before me have covered the points, but maybe if I had to just summarize the point, there are two aspects to this. One is the amount of power you are consuming, and second is the quality of power you are consuming. Amount relates to, whatever power goes into the IT load, possibly it is for Sajan and the OEMs of the world who have to take care that how power efficient equipment they make, so that the equipment consumes lesser power. But beyond that, the data center provider does not have a control on how much power the equipment controls. So on the IT load, the power which goes into the IT load. What is there in our control is the power which goes towards cooling. And that is what, like Kamal also mentioned about it. So while the data centers of today are far more efficient from the PUE point of view, we used to talk about PUE like 1.9 just a couple of years back. And today we start talking about PUE of 1.4 and 1.5. So we have come a long way in implementing those technologies and implementing those operating practices. And I think beyond that automation which we have done today, the introduction of AI ML again would basically be able to make the systems much more intelligent, proactively take input from many more ecosystem parameters to detect that where is the scope for reduced cooling compared to just keep on doing the same amount of cooling throughout the day for all type of load and for all the areas of the data center. And that is something I think on the, the internet is full with the story of how Google has actually implemented of AI ML to reduce their cooling. Possibly they have put in some AI algorithm to actually reduce the amount of cooling beyond the regular automation what we are doing. So that is one way where the amount of power consumed in data centers need to be reduced. And I think that is a journey we all are into different phases of doing. Second, again, obviously is the quality of the power, which leads to how much green power it is. And yes, I agree with Kamal that as on today, it too much depends on the regulatory aspect of this. This is a state subject. It's not a central subject. Different state governments have different policies. You cannot make a solar project, for example, next to your data center, because the rooftop is just generating maybe 100 kilowatt of power, which is like a peanuts for data center. You need acres and acres of land, and that land which is not, let's say, agriculture worthy, so it has to be a remote area, right? If you're using that land, you have to actually then wheel that power into your data center. So suddenly the aspect of what wheeling charges, what wheeling losses the government is charging, what transmission charges, transmission losses government is charging. Are you able to generate more solar power during the daytime and use it in the nighttime, which leads to banking, which most of the state governments are not allowing, because it leads to reducing the revenues for their utility providers, right? Are you able to bring the cost of energy storage down so that you can actually, again, generate much more power during the daytime, store it, and use it in the nighttime? These are many of the aspects which we all are trying to handle as an industry. Good part, which I can clearly see both at the central government level, at a state government level, the awareness level and the appreciation of data centers which the government has of the today, whether government itself going huge digital way or supporting the data center operator with coming out with very friendly policies. I think that is a great thing. As an industry, as we progress, as we build more and more capacities, I think government ecosystem support will come up, and these problems possibly 2 years down the line will not be talking, we'll talk some better challenges in the times to come.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say it's incredibly inspiring to hear all of you talk about the sort of sustainability aspect of data centers. And it's clear that a lot of good thinking has gone into this. So it's not just about growth for growth's sake, but it's also about growth and conservation of the environment. Look, that's it. Those were all of my sort of questions. I really wanted to thank all of you for your time today. I really appreciate that. And look, it's been a fantastic sort of discussion from my perspective. Apologies for the internet connectivity. I'm not sure whose data center was to blame there, but hopefully, it's something that we can get resolved without too much hassle. Shika, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very, very much, Abhishek. And no blames at all, because we absolutely enjoyed the conversation. And I have to say a big thank you to the entire panel for addressing on outfitting and managing a data center, monitoring operations of assets, and of course, your expert advices that poured in, of course, from the leading CEOs there across the spectrum of data center management. If you talk about, I'm sure this is definitely going to help all our viewers watching there. Well, this conference track is powered by Juniper Networks, and all of you got to show some real power by trying to claim your gift vouchers, now worth rupees 1,000 to, of course, 5,000, by engaging with us. You already know what you have to do. Of course, keep weaving those conversations using the official hashtag that's mentioned right on your screens. And of course, explore everything that's there on the platform that's for your good use. So do that, and we'll be right back with some firecracker discussion, a fireside chat that's going to coming your way.